Hello everybody, my name is Nicola and welcome back to my channel. I blog over at thefrugalcottage.com all about budgeting, money saving, investing and lots of things in between. And today's video is all about what I think people should maybe think about doing during this period of time. Now, I'm not a financial advisor, this is just my opinion on what people should be kind of thinking about. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let's get started. So this period of time at the moment is really kind of tricky. It's a bit unknown, people don't know what's happening, but financially the markets have absolutely crashed, 20-30% down. People are starting to lose jobs, or they're having to work from home, or they're having like an unpaid leave because the place where they work is just not open. Lots of people in different sectors, so like the hospitality sector, the creative, the entertainment sectors are finding their jobs are just being cancelled because there is no work for them. And it is a really tricky time, especially if it's not something you've had to navigate before. But the first thing you should do in this situation, I think, is to assess your own situation, so your current situation. So write down or work out, if you don't know, what is your bare bones budget. So by that, like the absolute minimum you have to get by. So you need to make sure in this kind of circumstance that you have the basics covered. So that is the shelter that you live in. So either it's your mortgage or your rent payment. Now, some companies, some banks will let you have a mortgage holiday, which means that you get to kind of not pay your mortgage for 3 months, I think it is. You do have to apply for that, and you do have to prove that you don't have the financial means to pay that, but that is an option. For renting, I guess you could apply to a landlord for the same scenario. I don't know how easy that would be, to be honest. But there are things, but you need to make sure that you need to be able to pay your mortgage, your council tax, water and gas and electricity and food. And if you are on, like, you suddenly find yourself with no income, they are the only things that you need to be able to cover. Everything else, give or take, can be taken out of your budget if necessary. That might seem a bit harsh, but if you've got no money coming in, you do need to cut back as much as possible, just for the short term. So things like, if you can, try and cancel any kind of gym membership you have, or if you have a really expensive Sky package, for example, either cancel it or downgrade it, and explain the situation. Companies know what's going on, and might have solutions to that. The same with phone bills. So if you've got a really expensive mobile phone contract, try and see if you can get that reduced, even in just the short term. I think the thing with this is that there's going to have to be flexibility somewhere, because if people genuinely can't pay, what their service is, then that company isn't going to get the money regardless, because if you have no job, you can't pay it. So you do need to be slightly more kind of harsh about what is a need and what is a want in this scenario. But you do need to assess your own situation. So, for example, if there's one person working in the household and one person has, for whatever reason, lost their job in the current climate, you need to assess what your goals are, even if they're just temporary at that stage. If you're on kind of the baby steps program, so that's the Dave Ramsey style way of paying off things, I think the suggestion for that, kind of reading into it, is to pause the journey. So if you're on, I think, is it baby step 2, where you're paying off all your debts, you need to pause that and just pay the absolute minimum you can. And the reason for that is if you've kind of had a sudden loss of income and your household income is reduced, you need to try and keep as much money that's coming in kind of for you to like see out the storm, so to speak. So any kind of debt repayments do need to be scaled back to the minimum. Some people might disagree with that, but if you're kind of looking at precarious like job situations, you need to be able to kind of keep the money that you're currently earning for yourself where necessary. And in the same respect there, so definitely cut back on, don't stop paying them altogether, because that just leads to a snowball of getting worse, but pay the minimum amount possible. And the other side to that is if you've got any spare money, then you need to put that in your emergency fund if you have one. And if you don't have one, now is the time to start. If anything has happened during this and opened anybody's eyes, mine included, because our emergency fund is not very big at all, it is the fact that you need an emergency fund to kind of fall back on, if you like. So if you're working at the moment but you know that things are a bit iffy, start piling any spare money you've got at all into that emergency fund. So for whatever reason something happens, you have some money kind of sat there that can pay for, you know, your rent, your gas and electricity, so your houses, or, you know, those kind of things that need to be covered. So any spare money that you've got there, if you have, needs to be directed straight to that emergency fund, and an emergency fund needs to be somewhere that you can directly, instantly access that. So for example, ours is on an online savings account, but it's with the same bank that we have our current account, so I can transfer that over to our current account if needed, and that's there like straight away. There's no waiting around or anything. An emergency fund needs to be able to be accessed like in an emergency straight away. That's the idea behind those. So kind of pause your debt payments, make them the minimum, and just kind of divert any spare money at all. And it might seem really silly, like, oh, I've got £30 left at the end of this week. Put it in your emergency fund, because you are never going to know what you might need that for. And if you're thinking of ahead and like, well, that could maybe pay for, I don't know, half a week's worth of shopping, you've got to think about that. And it's basically survival mode, whether you like it or not. And now is the time, especially if you're now at home because you're not able to work, or maybe you're in self-isolation mode, as quite a lot of people seem to be now. If you have any spare time and feel okay, obviously this is all dependent on you feeling okay, do not force yourself to do things if you are genuinely struggling and are ill. You need to wait for that to pass. But if you are, now is the time to think about if you can make any extra money from your house. So I will link down 2 different videos below. So I've got one about profitable side hustles and passive income streams. I'll leave both those video links in the description box. Have a watch of those. But now is the time to see if you can make any extra money from your house. So is there anything in your house that you could sell? Facebook, eBay, Facebook Marketplace, easier because it's people kind of who live near you, although obviously this becomes a bit tricky if you're not supposed to come in contact with people. It's all up in the air, but these are just some ideas to get some extra money in. So maybe then on eBay, because then you post it and you're not actually talking to somebody. But either way, kind of selling things that you no longer need it, and be ruthless. If you need to bring in money because you have your income stream has stopped, you do need to think really careful about what you actually need. And again, it might seem a bit kind of drastic, but now is the time to really think about what is important. Maybe you have always wanted to start a blog, or I don't know, try match betting, because that is another income source. I'll leave a link below to the website where you can start, you can try that, and you can get £40 from the free offers. I'll link that below. Things that you might have think, oh, I'll get round to one day. Now is the time to try those. Survey sites. Now, surveys in general don't bring in that much money. They don't, but on an evening when you're sat there on the sofa, have it open on your laptop, on your phone, and get filling in surveys. There's quite a few that pay out, you know, reasonable amounts, but over time that will also add up, and you might be able to get a voucher for somewhere that then you might be able to use for some food shopping. It's all about thinking about being prepared. Maybe you're really good at designing things. Maybe start an Etsy shop and get that out there. Whatever you are good at, now is the time to try and make that work for you in terms of bringing in that extra income stream. And again, if this kind of scenario shows anything, and this is the same for lots of people, we are all far too reliant on just our one main income stream. And we're the same in our family. I was talking to my husband about this yesterday. We're fairly reliant on just our day-to-day job income, and if one of us were to lose that, not even both of us, just one, we'd be stuck fairly quickly, actually. Kind of as I was writing and researching this video and thinking about how we would cope, and actually it's a really scary scenario that most of us haven't had to, you know, touch wood, thankfully, deal with. And the other side to dealing with this and trying to think of other ways to bring in money whilst you're at home is the fact that the added complication, if you like, of then not being able to talk to anyone. If you're being advised to stay at home and self-isolate, that literally means you stay at home and you don't really leave the 4 walls. And that again adds in lots of more different complications to kind of making money, but also just seeing people and kind of keeping your mental health at a level. But you know, try and find different ways of bringing in any kind of extra cash at this time. And obviously there's things like check that you have the best deal for your home insurance, your life insurance, any kind of insurance. go via Top Cashback or Quidco, get the cashback. That doesn't happen immediately, but again, it's another kind of source that will eventually pay out. It does take a while. And the main thing I think is, and it's very much easy for me to say, and it's much harder to implement, especially if you're in one of these places where if you're on like total lockdown. I've got a friend who lives in France and they're on total lockdown, and she's supposed to still try and work from home, but her 2 children are at home. She's got 2 young children, and it's very difficult to kind of get on as normal, but in not a normal situation. But the main thing is try not to panic and talk to people if you are struggling with anything like this. Talking to, I know, whoever's in your house, or ring a friend, you know, the things you used to do. So I'm the worst person for ringing anybody. I hate talking on the phone, but sometimes if you're not going to see people for a while, just hearing that friendly voice might help. And talk through ideas, talk through things. If you are genuinely struggling for money, talk to people around. People are willing to help, and I think there's 2 sides to this. So the kind of the over mad stockpiling, panicking. I've been to Asda this morning to try and get Calpol for like the millionth time, it feels like, this week, and there's still nothing of that on the shelves. Same as toilet roll. There's 2 sides. So there's the side of where everybody seems to be for themselves and they're just buying ridiculous amounts of things, and then the other side where you'll get a message from someone saying, does anybody need anything? Do you need any of these? Can I help with kind of whatever? And there's 2 sides, and we need to remember that, you know, we are all in this situation together. There are things you can do to help both yourself and people around you, and try not to panic. Which is, I mean, if we get it, then ask me that again. But you know, in the grand scheme of things, there are things, and you can, if necessary, there are kind of financial hardship things you can apply for. There is obviously benefits. It depends on your household circumstances and situation, but there are things you need to do. But assess your own situation, and also it might seem mad, but track your budget and your spending. You know, if you've watched my videos before, I'm a massive fan of tracking spending and a budget. If your income is precarious or it's gone, it's even more important, whether it's through pen and paper, an app or a spreadsheet, whatever method you like. I'll leave the link to my budget planner below, but that is just one option. You need to track every single penny that's going out, because if you only have a limited income source, you also only have a limited spending source, if you like. You don't want to have that overlap. That's when it starts to get tricky, and we don't know, and this is the thing that gets a lot of people, we don't know how long this scenario is going to last for. If you watch the UK government bumble their way through this, no one knows where it's going to go. No one knows what's going to happen, no one knows how long it's going to last for, no one knows just exactly what we're going through. In terms of, the government can't seem to make up their minds. It's very frustrating in that respect. I work in an education setting, and as far as we know, it's get on as normal, and in a very not normal scenario, if that makes sense. But these things, the summary of this is, assess your situation, pause your debt payments, don't stop them completely, but pause them to the bare minimum. Any spare change, send to your emergency fund for thinking ahead, being prepared. Try different side hustles. Again, I'll link some different videos below to help you for this. But don't panic. We're all trying our best here, and we'll make it through the other side one way or the other. Hope this has been helpful for you. I've kind of rambled on at quite a speed, but these kind of things I've been mulling over this morning about how to word these, and I hope this has been helpful. I hope you're okay if you're in lockdown, or not if you're trying to get on as normal. It's quite a stressful situation, whichever scenario you're in at the moment. But there we go. So don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video.